For the past few weeks here, I've been fishing this Canfish Fishing Cam X underwater fishing camera. That is a mouthful. I've been doing so almost daily, trying to weed out the pros and the cons that this camera has to offer. And let me tell you, there are some headaches. In this video, I'm going to be going over exactly what I wish I had known prior to taking this thing out on the water for its first couple times. Give you guys some information to help alleviate some of the issues and surprises that come along with this camera. Stick around. Hopefully I can help you guys dial this thing in and you can get some awesome footage. Let's get right into this camera's review. First off, the box itself. When you open your package and see this box, this thing is built legit. When you open this box, you obviously find the camera, which is packed in nice, firm foam. You also find these instructions. You get a QR code to a Facebook thing. You get a card essentially showing you a quick type of setup. You get the manual, more or less, which is very small. You get a foam ring that this camera goes in. That will turn this thing into a bobber. It will go just like so. Boom. And then you more or less have this thing shooting straight down as it moves through the lake or down the creek or wherever you decide to use it. This probably will be an ice fishing activity with that thing. This thing also comes with a charging cable, which I find to be very well built. The cable that it comes with is one that is almost of the fabric material so that it doesn't have any fraying near the end of the cable itself. I really like these things. These are much more flexible than the old style of cable. But first and foremost, whenever I unbox any electronics, I immediately put them on the charger. And that way I fully charge them so that I know that I will have the entire life of the battery for whatever I go to use it for. When I did this, I noticed that this thing has a green light that appears on it. I didn't know if maybe that was because it came fully charged. Highly unlikely. Typically, green means good to go. I've noticed that that's the only light that's on here. There is no light indicating that it is charging, more or less. There's no red light that's on when the battery is low. There's no yellow light that's on indicating that it is actively charging. The only thing that comes on is a green light letting you know that there's power going to the camera and therefore it should be charging. Now, the number one thing on battery maintenance says avoid overcharging and over-discharging. Overcharging and over-discharging are one of the main causes of battery damage. And yet, you don't know when you're overcharging or over-discharging because you only have one light telling you that you're charging. If that's a cause for battery damage, you would think that they would put on two lights to help you not overcharge or over-discharge your battery. Possibly something that they could look into. Your guess is as good as mine as to how charged this thing is and when it's fully charged, which kind of sucks. Now, as I was letting this thing charge, I went and found the app that you need to run this camera with. In your instructions, they don't give you any information on what the app is. I had to look it up. It wasn't the end of the world, but you would assume that if they're going to give you a nice card with a QR code telling you how to review their product, they would also put on this card a link to the app that lets you run their product, but they don't. Found the app, downloaded that fairly quickly, and connected the camera to the phone. And I'll just quickly run through right here how to connect your phone to the camera and how to update that firmware to its most recent version. It's very simple. Just follow the steps you're prompted to do and you're good to go. Now you want to update this thing's firmware to the most recent version so that you have everything that obviously is up to date for this camera. It states that this camera has 16 gigs of internal storage on a micro SD card that you can't get to. That frustrates the living crap out of me. Not being able to take out a card and put it into your computer to watch what you've recorded is a massive time suck. And it brings me to my next point. The only way to export photos off of this thing is by connecting this camera to your phone via Wi-Fi and then downloading those photos or videos onto your phone. This wouldn't be that big of a deal if I edited my videos on my phone, but I don't. I edit my videos on my computer. So it takes one more step just to get these videos off of this camera and onto my computer. I have to take them from this camera, download them onto my phone, then take them from my phone and download them onto my computer. It's very inefficient. I'm not sure how they could take and make this connect to a computer directly, but I feel as if there is definitely a way. That way it would be saving a step and you wouldn't be spending as much time with your images and uploading them to your computer. If they were able to get an SD card in this thing somehow, allowing you to swap cards, that would make it a huge time saver. And it also would allow you the opportunity to make sure that you wouldn't ever run out of storage. I feel like when you're filming at 1080, is a decent amount of storage for this, but you're going to constantly be wondering how much you have left in the tank. And I hate that feeling. I like to know that if I want to record for an hour, I have the ability to, and I don't have that option with this camera unless I am constantly offloading my stuff almost immediately after filming. The only way that you can offload these images and videos from this camera is via the Wi-Fi that comes with it, which leads me to discussing the flaws with this camera's Wi-Fi. It seems as if the ability to connect to this camera's Wi-Fi is very random. Sometimes it works perfect, no issues. Other times, doesn't work at all. I found nothing more frustrating with this camera than thinking that you've got some pretty epic footage trying to connect right after catching the fish, only for this thing to not have its Wi-Fi work, and you being A, unsure if you even got the footage, and B, unable to offload that footage, allowing more space on the camera for the next fish that you catch. I have noticed that the pairing issue with the Wi-Fi typically comes when the camera is wet or cold. If it's dry conditions like this, the thing's been charging, it hasn't been in use, Wi-Fi 95% of the time, non-issue. It's when the thing's been in the water for a period of time that it chooses to be finicky and not connect to your phone. Now it does indicate in the directions, do not dry this thing with any sort of heat source, hair dryer, anything like that. If you are to try and dry this thing off to connect quicker to the Wi-Fi, use a towel, use something that isn't producing heat. Oftentimes, after catching a fish, I want to see my footage right away. I don't want to have to wait for hours for this thing to dry and then upload it to my phone, to then upload it to my computer, to then see if it turned out the way I imagined it in my head or not. This leads me to my next con about this camera, which is once your files are uploaded to your computer, good luck figuring out what one's what. There is literally no rhyme or reason to the naming, you could say, of each file. It is a random selection of letters and numbers, not with any sort of pattern or any indication of a certain sequence of how they were filmed. It is just whatever assortment of letters and numbers this camera assigns them for that specific clip. I find that to be extremely challenging to sort through my video. To have any sort of organization with this camera, you have to go back through each clip and rename what that clip is. A lot of times with my GoPros, I can at least know that things went in a certain order, and I remember when I filmed what was coming up next. This, not a clue. So you have to do more time investment with going through and renaming every clip. A, even seeing if you want to keep the clip to see if it turned out the way you thought it would, but then B, renaming it. So from then on out, you know what that clip was, and it's not just a jumbled mess of numbers and letters. When getting the footage from this, I don't want to be moving the file 4 different locations, and I don't want to be spending time renaming what every file is so that I have some sort of clue. I'd like it to be just a little simpler. Ultimately, all of this time spent renaming and moving footage could be spent actually editing the footage. That's what I like to do. There continues to be a pattern here of things that I have to do that require my time, that don't involve me actually editing my footage. After I'm done filming and start my editing process, I like things to be efficient and I like them to be timely. And it seems as if this camera is having a hard time with both of those scenarios. That's enough out of water issues. Now let's turn our attention to how this camera actually functions in the water. When I started reviewing some of the footage that I captured from the first fishing trip with this camera, I noticed that the footage did not look great. And that's because this camera has a positive buoyancy to it, meaning that this thing wants to float. Now to counter that issue, I did two different things. One of which was I took and I placed little split shots along the bottom of this fin. The other option that you can do is you can put some sort of egg weight or bullet weight, some sort of sinker on the line. Now this thing states that it already weighs 1.08 pounds. I'm not sure if that's true. When you add these weights, obviously the weight of the entire thing will go up, and it is pretty heavy to be casting this. This doesn't seem as if it would be the best thing to use if you were just casting out a line. This seems like either using it as a massive bobber with that blue thing, or better yet, as a trolling camera. But to cast this thing out and reel it back in seems like it could break it, A, and B, it would be extremely heavy on your line. Now, some people do use this camera to visualize what's going on underwater while fishing live, and that is an option. But that goes away as soon as this camera is completely submerged. The only time this camera will allow you live streaming to your phone is when the end of this thing is out of the water. That more or less says you can only use this when you use it as a bobber. Once the thing goes down like that to troll, you lose your connection to it, live connection to it, I should say, and you can no longer see what's going on. I personally have no interest in using this live. This is strictly going to be to capture a different angle for my videos. But when you do lose that live connection, it just stalls out. It doesn't say that it's still recording or not. It is. The thing still records. You just don't have anything on your screen showing that it's still recording. So that was a little confusing. Now I noticed once I got this thing leveled out and trolling good, so it wasn't pointing up or down, I believe that the weight on this thing disrupted how it was traveling through the water. Instead of having a nice straight fluid motion going through the water, it was a little wonky. And the way that I went about fixing that was I just went to the store, found the cheapest plastic picture frame I could find, cut out a nice little fin that's removable, and slapped it on the top of this thing. I think that that works pretty good. I think that it makes it so it's minimal visibility for the fish, and it allows this thing to travel through the water much better than it was before the fin. You notice there's two fins on the side that are fairly small, followed by the big fin that I mentioned you can attach your split shots to. They do help, but once you put that weight on, it's just a little too much for these things to handle. Adding that additional fin drastically improved this thing's ability to track on a single straight line. Now you guys are going to have to figure out what length of leader works best for you. Around the 24 to 30 inch length is what I found to be perfect length for this. I'm going to have to do a little bit more fishing and play with that leader a little bit more to find out exactly what length I like the most. But that's a good ballpark on where to start to get this camera to film a good strike from any fish. I don't know who will be purchasing this thing besides a content creator. I do know that the live view might intrigue some people just so that you can watch on your phone and kind of understand how fish bite, what they're targeting, that kind of thing. So maybe to the beginning fisherman that doesn't know what's going on under the water so much and they're trying to figure out what works best. A massive positive about this camera right here is the image quality of this thing. That almost nullifies all the other headaches that come with it because this thing produces great video. I think that on the market, this is probably the best option of camera that you can buy in regards to getting underwater footage the way that it films. This thing films in 1080p. I believe I mentioned that before, and it films fantastic. It would be nice to have 4K option. Everybody's leaning that way. With the 16 gig internal storage, 4K would chew that up almost immediately. So the 1080p is perfect. It works wonders in the 10 to 40 foot range that I've been fishing in. I'm very, very pleased with the video coming off this thing so far. I am interested to see how it looks the deeper I go. I actually haven't seen any videos of anybody fishing this thing very deep. It states that this thing is capable of going 200 meters or 656 feet deep, which is insane to me. I don't know why anybody would even attempt that, but if you want to, you can do it, apparently. I do want to send this thing down a couple hundred feet to see what happens if I get a halibut on or a rockfish. That's going to be a possibility of catching a large fish. You're going to need to attach this thing appropriately to your line so that you don't end up snapping it at the wrong place and losing it. When you guys do fasten this to your line, obviously this end will be attached to the heavier test. So this is going to go to the main line. This is going to go to your lure. Whatever this is, I like to run braided 50-pound minimum. This will be something under that so that when or if your line snaps, it snaps here and you still have your camera. You do not want it snapping up here because obviously goodbye $160. Another great feature about this thing is that the on and off switch is solid. It's tough to push, but once it's on, that thing is not coming off. You could bounce this thing off the bottom of the lake, bounce it off some rocks in the river. It is going to be on until you decide to turn it off, which is a great feature. You don't want this thing going and accidentally getting hit by something, thinking you get some sweet footage, when in actuality, you just bumped off a rock and shut the whole thing down. As for now, that's kind of all that's come to mind for me so far. Guys, remember, update the thing's firmware immediately, give it a good charge, guess when the thing's fully charged, know that when this thing's submerged, it is recording, figure out what works best for you, weight-wise. Go and test this thing out a couple times, just filming behind the boat or doing whatever before you actually go attempt to fish and get those sweet shots. I don't want you getting disappointed when you go and film and think you got some epic footage and it turns out this thing was going and doing whirly birds the whole time. That's all I got to say about it. As long as it stays at the price that it is and you guys can find a good use for it, this thing is pretty sweet. Excited to see how this thing works ice fishing. Excited to see how this thing works in the deep. Thank you guys for sticking around. Go check out another one of my review videos if you want, or maybe just a crazy adventure video that I got up here in the corner somewhere. Either way, I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you on the next one. Can fish, not too bad.